Over the past several years, the medical field has been, it would appear, on a mission to destroy its own credibility. And that process was essentially completed when every major medical institution in the Western world decided to wholeheartedly endorse, and in many cases actively engage in, the castration and sterilization of gender-confused children. The moment that the medical industry as a whole, over the objection of a sane minority, declared that actually biological sex doesn't exist and that actually turns out men can have babies, the game was over. That was it. The entire industry had been ideologically captured, and now it has less scientific credibility than your local psychic or tarot card reader or whoever. But that was not the end of the story, because things only got worse from there. The medical field cannot kill its own credibility twice, but it can dig up the rotting corpse of its credibility, light the corpse on fire, and then toss it into the deepest depths of the sea. And that seems to be its plan now. So that brings us to the war on so-called fat phobia, which we've talked about many times on the show. And we know that plus-sized TikTok influencers and others in that vein have been on a crusade against the imaginary concept of fat phobia for a while now. But increasingly, doctors who might also be TikTok influencers, many of them are joining the fight to defend morbid obesity. Libs of TikTok alerts us to one of these doctors. Dr. Nicole Van Groning has a TikTok account with nearly 50,000 followers where she often discusses the dangers of fat phobia, not the dangers of obesity, but the dangers of fat phobia. And in fact, she says that TikTok helped to open her eyes to this problem. Her medical textbooks may tell her that obesity is bad, but TikTok says that it isn't. And she, like so many other medical professionals, is siding with TikTok on this one. So watch.
I am tired all the time and something is wrong. And he said, you just need to lose some weight.
One of the things I've learned as a doctor on TikTok is how many people are going to the doctor and just being told to lose weight. I have always known, trust me, that weight can be a source of shame and stigma and something that actually stops people from going to the doctor because they want to go get help with their problems, but they don't want to be weighed. They don't want to get a lecture on how they need to lose weight, especially when they're things that have nothing to do with their weight, and people want to avoid that lecture on weight loss when they just want help with their nausea or something. I think learning from all of you creators and commenters how big of a problem this is has really made an impression on me, and quite frankly has changed my practice. So I actually ask patients if it is okay to talk about weight. If they don't want to be weighed at an appointment, that is okay. We actually are changing our electronic health record to make it so weight isn't even printed out on their discharge paperwork if they don't want to see it. Because this is crazy. You should be able to go to a doctor for a legitimate health concern and not have it blamed on your weight. This is not okay.
Well, that's good. Yeah, let's not put the weight on their health records, because increasingly we want to remove all actual physical information about people from their health record, because you don't want to put weight on there because it might offend them. Obviously, you don't want to put their biological sex on there because that might offend them, and you don't want to put their height on there because a lot of people are self-conscious about that. And it's basically so everyone's health record just says person, and that's the entire record. It's just that this is some, but even that might be because that's limiting too. So it's just, we're all, according to our health records, we're all just like these amorphous kind of vague blobs of nondescript matter. That's what our health records will say about us. Now, first of all, I may not be a doctor myself, but I'm pretty sure that if you are struggling with nausea, your weight could have everything to do with it. In fact, pretty much any ailment involving your stomach or your digestive tract can be caused or exacerbated by obesity. Also, any ailment involving your internal organs or your bones or your heart or any other part of your body can be caused or exacerbated by obesity. This is one of the many basic medical facts that this medical doctor apparently doesn't understand or is pretending to not understand. She also says that, again, she won't talk about weight with her patients if they don't want to hear about it, which is exactly the same as a dentist agreeing to not talk about cavities, or a fire inspector agreeing to not tell you about fire hazards, or a mechanic agreeing to ignore issues with your braking system. Like, the person's whole job is to address those kinds of issues. Now, it's true that, it makes me feel bad when the mechanic tells me that I need new brake pads. I don't like hearing it. It makes me feel all icky and sad, and I don't like it. So when he comes back with the brake pad news, I say to myself, man, I wish I didn't need new brake pads. But what I don't say is, man, I wish he didn't tell me about the brake pads. That's because if there is an issue with the brake pads, it's much better that I know than I not know. And I'd much prefer a mechanic who identifies these problems and tells me about them than one who can't identify them, or worse, can, but doesn't tell me. And this logic clearly applies to doctors too. I should say that it applies to doctors especially. But it gets worse from Dr. Nicole, if you can believe it. Let's watch this next video from her.
Here's my hot take as a doctor. I totally agree. It is okay to be fat. We don't say that enough, but it needs to be normalized. If you are fat, that is okay. It is typically not a problem that requires immediate solving. It is not an emergency. You don't have to drop everything in the pursuit of being not fat. Erin said this other thing in a different video that I totally agree with as well, is that it is okay to not be healthy. We act like it is this moral failing, this cardinal sin that you deserve a scarlet letter if you are not healthy. And there's a name for that, and that's called healthism. Now, don't get me wrong. In my line of work, there's a lot of people that I see that want to gain weight, lose weight, take other measures that they think will improve their health in some way. And by all means, that's what we're here for. We're here to help you with that and be supportive of that. But a good doctor will not judge you for being fat. They will not judge you for being unhealthy. They will not judge the decisions that you made or the decisions that were made for you, which is the much more likely scenario that got you to the point where you are right now. We're here to help you with the changes that you want to make. And if you are someone who wants to lose weight for health purposes, and there are certain scenarios where losing weight can be health promoting, we're here to help you with that. We are also here to help you if you decide to not make any changes at all. We're still there.
Now, it's hard to know where to begin except to say that a doctor who announces it's okay to be unhealthy should be immediately fired and then bankrupted by malpractice lawsuits. If you are a patient of Dr. Nicole, then you would be better off getting on a plane and flying down to Brazil and then hiking into the Amazon to seek medical care from a tribal shaman in a mud hut somewhere deep in the jungle. In fact, a lot better off, actually, because the shaman may not have the best remedies for your ailments, but at least he'll recognize that your ailments are ailments. He at least knows that being unhealthy is bad. And although Amazonian shamans have probably never actually witnessed obesity firsthand, we can be pretty certain that if they did see it, they would recognize that it's not ideal. So no matter how you slice it, this American doctor has less medical knowledge and credibility than somebody whose scientific understanding of the world hasn't advanced beyond the year 3000 BC. I mean, that's how bad things are now. She also assures us that being unhealthy is not a moral failing. And you know, that can be true in certain circumstances. I mean, if you have multiple sclerosis or arthritis or brain cancer, then your illness certainly is not your fault. But many forms of unhealthiness are, in fact, at least partially a result of your moral failings. Like physical unhealthiness is one of the main immediate consequences of moral failings, in fact. Obesity is the prime example. You become obese by eating too much and exercising too little. In other words, you become obese through gluttony and sloth, which are not only sins, but two of the 7 deadly sins. They're both bad enough to have made the top 7. That doesn't mean that you should wallow in your self-loathing and guilt if you're fat. Quite the opposite. Realizing that your obesity is indeed your fault and is indeed a moral failing is empowering. It means that you have the power to change it. You made yourself fat. You can now make yourself unfat. And this is good news. And if a patient doesn't want to hear the good news, that's all the more reason why they should hear it. But they're not going to hear it from Dr. Nicole, who isn't interested in helping her patients be healthier. Instead, she wants to free them from the bonds of what she calls healthism. It's 2024, and a lot of us are trying to get our finances in order. There's some great news for homeowners. Interest rates have dropped and are now in the 5s, a lot lower than they were last year. If you've been buried in high-interest credit card debt, now's the time to break free with American Financing. American Financing can help you access the cash in your home to pay off your high-interest debt. Last year, their salary-based mortgage consultants helped customers save an average of $854 a month. It's like giving yourself a $10,000 raise a year, and that's a great way to start the new year, to say the least. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments, but you got to take advantage of this deal right now. Call American Financing today at 866-569-4711. That's 866-569-4711, or visit AmericanFinancing.net. NMLS 182334, NMLSConsumerAccess.org, APR for rates in the 5 started 6.406% for well-qualified buyers. Call 866-569-4711 for details about credit costs and terms. Now, it had been about 3 weeks since the left invented a new ism word, so we have a new one just in time, and it's healthism. But what is healthism? Well, she uses the term, but the exact definition isn't clear from the context. You know, we know that racism is supposed to be when you hate someone based on their race. Sexism is when you hate someone based on their sex. So is healthism when you hate someone because they're healthy? I mean, the fat acceptance crowd does tend to resent people who lose weight and get healthy. Does that make them healthist? Are they health phobic? That would actually make a little bit of sense, which is how you know that that's not what's meant by the term. So I Googled it, and here's what I found on a website called withinhealth.com. They have a whole article about healthism, and this is what it says. Quote, healthism refers to a set of attitudes and beliefs that health is the most important pursuit in life, and that it is the personal responsibility of the individual and solely within that person's control. Those who subscribe to these beliefs view the pursuit of health, which is often conflated with thinness, as a moral good. Now, just a quick note here. The pursuit of health is a moral good. Now, it may not be the most important pursuit in life, but given that the continuation of your life and your ability to pursue anything at all depends on your health, it should at least be like in your top 5 of priorities. And none of this should be remotely controversial. It especially should not be controversial among medical professionals, but here we are. Reading on, the problem with this is that healthism doesn't acknowledge that health isn't entirely within a person's control. There are also larger biological, social, cultural, and environmental issues that contribute to poor health, such as genetics, poverty, violence, trauma, environment, diet culture, and discrimination, and oppression of all kinds, including ableism, racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, fat phobia, and weight stigma. Healthism is insidious and stigmatizing, harming people living in larger bodies, as well as many other marginalized identities. Fat is a term that has been reclaimed by higher weight individuals, and fat people are subject to weight stigma in many different settings by many different people. These include school, work, healthcare, and even the home by family, friends, healthcare providers, teachers, coaches, and colleagues. Fat people are often viewed and labeled as immoral, irresponsible, lacking willpower, lazy, weak, slovenly, unmotivated, undisciplined, unintelligent, and so much more. Healthism doesn't just harm people living in larger bodies either. It is used to maintain ableism, racism, transphobia, classism, and more. Well, that's no surprise. All of the new isms and phobias they invent are always connected to the other isms and phobias. So if you're guilty of one, you're automatically guilty of all the rest, along with whatever new ones they might make up in the future. That's how this works. But whether they call this healthism or fat phobia or whatever new buzzword they might invent tomorrow, it doesn't change the truth, which is that it is good to be healthy and it is not good to be unhealthy. A medical professional like Dr. Nicole certainly understands that fact. Notice how she herself appears to be in excellent physical shape. So she is obviously taking care of her body. But if you want to destroy your own body, she will be there, standing on the sidelines with pom-poms, cheering you on. And that's because she wants you to be fat and weak and sick. That's what all these people want for you. They wish for you a short and mediocre life. Joy, health, fitness, longevity. These are the things they want for themselves, but not for you. And speaking of insidious, it really doesn't get more insidious than that. And that is why Dr. Nicole and every doctor like her is today canceled. Hey, YouTube, thanks for listening to the show. If you'd like access to my full show with no ads, you should go to dailywire.com and use promo code Walsh to get 2 months free on all annual plans. See you there.